Evaluation question 3. What we have learned through our audience feedback. Audience feedback was very important when planning our trailer and what we were going to include. Audience feedback is necessary to find out what our audience wanted from our trailer and what they didn't want. Without this, we may have created an unsuccessful product that wasn't accepted well by its targeted audience. One of the ways we researched what our audience wanted was by asking them to complete a questionnaire. The first question asked them which subgenre of horror they preferred. We found that 60% of our audience preferred psychological horrors, therefore we chose to make our film of the psychological genre. We chose to demonstrate this through the mental deterioration of the protagonist, for example in the following clip.
You don't still believe there's something in this house, do you? You need help.
I don't need help!
The second question asked whether they preferred the trailer to be filmed with a handheld camera. Our results showed the majority did not want us to film with a handheld camera, therefore we complied with the wishes of the audience. The third question was about the type of music our audience preferred in horror films. 60% of the people we asked said they preferred slow and eerie music as opposed to fast and jumpy. Therefore, we used slow and eerie music, like in the following clip, to meet the audience's expectations of the horror trailer. In the next question, we gave 5 example fonts and asked the audience to pick their favourite for a horror film title. The majority of the audience preferred the font Scream Again, which is this one. However, we chose to use this one, called Crimes x6, instead, as we thought Scream Again looked too much like it belonged to the stalker-slasher genre and didn't convey the psychological subgenre that we had chosen. Therefore, in this instance, we went against our audience feedback and as a group thought this would be more appropriate. Here is the font we used, Crimes x6, used within our trailer. Question 5 asked what the audience wanted to see in terms of graphic imagery. Our results showed, from the majority who wanted to see some form of graphic imagery, the most popular types were bleeding wounds and amputated limbs with 20% of the vote each. However, due to our limited budget and special effects capabilities, we decided we wouldn't be able to include amputated limbs to a professional standard, but chose to include bleeding wounds, for example, in the following freeze frames. We felt this question was particularly important as graphic imagery is what makes a horror film so horrific, and we wanted to get the balance right to meet the audience's expectations, so this feedback was really useful. Question 6 asked whether the audience preferred narration through text or voice. 60% said they preferred voice narration, however we chose to use text narration as we thought this was more appropriate for the horror genre, where a voice narration may be more suitable on an action or adventure trailer. Overall, we decided as a group we could produce a text narration to a much higher standard than a voice narration, and so chose this for the purposes of the quality of the final product, for example in the following clip. Next, we asked the audience whether or not they preferred a realistic or non-realistic villain. Findings showed that the majority of those asked preferred the villain to be a realistic character. Therefore, we chose to comply with the audience's wishes and created the villain character as a little girl, who is realistic because she appears human. This question was very important because if the audience is most scared by realistic villains, then we need to comply with this, as the point of a horror trailer is to scare its audience. Lastly, we asked whether they preferred weapons or physical violence. The vast majority said they preferred weapons over physical violence, hence why we listened to our audience feedback and chose to use a blood-covered knife, for example in this next clip.